Welcome back to another episode of MedEd. Today I'll be talking about the brachial plexus. Now, the brachial plexus starts from the spinal cord from C5, C6, C7, C8, and T1. Right here in yellow, I'm drawing what's called the lateral cord, which splits up into the musculocutaneous nerve and joins the median nerve. Up here at the top is the spinal roots, C5 and C6. And right here in blue, I'm drawing what is called the middle trunk. And I'm drawing these branches, so the yellow branch that goes onto the lateral cord is called the anterior division, and the blue branch is called the posterior division because it forms onto the posterior cord. Right here in yellow is the inferior trunk, which comes from C8 and T1, and then it merges and then it forms the medial cord. Now, there is a branch from the medial cord that goes into the median nerve, and then the other side goes into or becomes the ulnar nerve. There's also a posterior, the median nerve right here is the middle one, and if you going back to our original drawing, we have the posterior cord right here in blue, and then another posterior division coming from the inferior trunk. Next, we have the divisions that come from the posterior cord. So we have what's called the axillary nerve, which comes out above the others, and then we have these three other ones on the bottom. We call the upper subscapular nerve, the thoracodorsal nerve, which is the middle one, and then the lower subscapular nerve. These two little green ones coming up, these little branches, we call those are two branches coming off the medial cord, which we'll discuss later. Right here we have the suprascapular nerve coming off of the superior trunk, and then we have the nerve to the subclavian, which also comes off C5 and C6 of the superior trunk. Now these three long segments come off of C5, C6, and C7, and form what we call the long thoracic nerve here in purple, and which goes and innervates muscles on the side of your ribs, which we call the serratus anterior. And right now, I just drew the spinal levels. Okay, let's do a quick review. Let's see how much we remember. Right here, do we remember what this one is? That's right, it's the long thoracic nerve. It's one we just talked about. All right, what else could we identify? What are these right here? Do you remember? The inferior trunk. Is there anything else we could identify? How about this upper one right here? Superior trunk. What about this long one back here? We talked about it. Yep, that's right. It's a thoracic dorsal nerve, and it innervates the latissimus dorsi. What about this upper one right here? That's right, the upper subscapular nerve. Now, what about the one below it, this lower one? That's right, the lower subscapular nerve. Now, taking just kind of a big look, what would be this big yellow one? That's right, not yellow, excuse me, the green one, the medial cord. This blue one back here, posterior trunk, posterior cord, or posterior nerve. That's right, it's the posterior cord. How about this yellow one? I'm forgetting what it may be. That's right, the lateral cord. Okay, going back, we have a few more nerve endings. What about this one right here? We mentioned it. That's right, it's a suprascapular nerve. Now, it's important that you test yourself when doing these quizzes. Now, we actually forgot one, or did we? We didn't discuss it, but for those who know their anatomy may know this one. It starts with the dorsal, and it's the dorsal scapular nerve. It innervates the rhomboids and a few other muscles. But this one right here, we mentioned it. Yep, that's right, the axillary nerve. And then we have a few other nerve endings we want to talk about. The axillary nerve innervates the deltoid muscle. What about these few down here? About this big one. We mentioned it earlier. It's the ulnar nerve. It innervates many of the muscles of the arm and forearm and the hand. And then we have the median nerve, which also innervates muscles of the arm and forearm. The musculocutaneous nerve plays an essential role in arm and forearm innervation. And then we have right here the radial nerve, which also plays a critical role for the upper extremity. Now we just have a few left. We've mentioned this one from earlier today. Remember, it's the nerve to the subclavian muscle. Or the nerve to subclavian is just the basic. This last one right here is the middle cord or middle trunk. It only has the spinal roots from C7, and it goes into the posterior cord and the lateral cord. Now remember, with the superior trunk, we have the middle trunk and the inferior trunk. Inferior trunk has T1, C8, middle has C7, while superior has C5, C6. Now remember the anterior division and the posterior divisions. Don't forget about the medial nerve, or the median nerve, the ulnar nerve, musculocutaneous nerve, the radial nerve, the axillary nerve, the lower subscapular nerve, the thoracodorsal nerve. Now there's one more we want to discuss, which plays a critical role in the pectoral major and pectoral minor. We call those the lateral pectoral nerve and the medial pectoral nerve. Now those names come from the cords that they originate from. So as you can imagine, the one from the medial cord is called medial pectoral nerve, and the one that comes from the lateral is called lateral pectoral nerve. And they both innervate the pectoralis major and the N minor, while the lateral only innervates the major. And then we have the suprasubscapular nerve. We have down here two essential muscles, the medial cutaneous nerve of the arm and the medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm. Now these play a critical role in the innervation of the upper extremity. And we have, here, one second. Medial cutaneous nerve of the forearm. Okay, and that should conclude all the nerve endings of the brachial plexus. Thank you very much for joining us today, and if you have any questions, please comment, and don't forget to like and subscribe.